Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is Jones reports for the 17th. Well, yeah, we saw the concern here with the magenta beginning to make a little fall, and then sure enough, as I pointed out, if we had the white cross above, you would have a continuation. We were looking for this spider event right here. I like to call it that simply because it forms these little peaks back and forth, but it's a crossover. It's a transition between, buyer power versus short power. And the problem has always been this one talked about is the inability of the steel to reset. Now, we're getting back to a zero point 0.4 steel, so potentially we could get a crossover in that, and that would give us that reset that is long overdue, and then you'd be back into a normal market progression. Now, what's interesting is a shakeout looking pretty ugly, and it could end up being a lower shakeout with a higher price at its culmination. That would be very interesting because that would suggest that a pretty strong buy is building from a daily standpoint. I mean, obviously, we'll see it intraday and stuff earlier, but that really becomes a significant one. I think it plays out that way. Didn't think that the support would hold if the MBI white was leading. It didn't. Getting a nice return right back now, hitting up against that 38%, and magenta looks like it's taking over. This was key, as we're pointing out, the magenta not dipping below yellow. Pivotal, you're still within weakness, but sort of a saving grace, if you will. And of course, this all gets back to the China thing and the Fed being how beautiful were they. Yeah, we're really going to do everything we can to not assist you with what's going on. So we're just going to claim that tariff uncertainty is causing us not to be able to do anything. So we're just going to have to sit on the sidelines because we expect inflation to just skyrocket from this. What a joke. I mean, if you did wondered whether or not they were, pro Biden when they cut rates into massive inflation, right before the election, and then, doing this setup within, what could really be productive as far as easing, if you're concerned about the, tariff situation, providing liquidity would certainly be helpful to people, you think. But no, not doing it. So that's fine. It'll still resolve, and it's going to be just fine from a treasury standpoint. It looks like the Chinese have abated on theirs. Of course, now then they shifted because they didn't get the desired effect from selling treasuries. The yuan still wasn't being able to sustain itself, even with the massive buying they were using from the sales of the treasuries. Well, now they've decided to cancel their Boeing contract, plane deliveries, things like that. It's going to start getting into this minutia messiness. But at the end of the day, China still ends up losing, no matter how you calculate it. They can either claim that the U.S. is not an important trading partner, or it's going to have a material impact. Which is it? Yeah, go figure that one. Now, this problem, because oil is creeping back up, oil really needs to get below this 60 level and stay there for an extended period of time to have any relevance for countering any potential inflation, because it will. And for the Fed not to recognize lower energy price as a major catalyst to how inflation plays out is I'm not even going to get into it because it's just a waste of time, because we've talked about it for so many years and they've never gotten it right in any of those courses, but that's okay. From a euro standpoint, this is a beautiful thing. The euro can be where it is given the situation for the EU economy, the fact they want to spend extra, $1 trillion to support more war in Ukraine and stuff. Beautiful. But it's going to resolve still in a buy. So not changed. Cyan under red, always buy, and beautiful shakeout, strong, but all positive extremes. So yes, it will all come back below that 108 at some point. And this is the reality gold, as we've talked about for too long, that it would just be a continuation. And then they're buying into this whole idea of the fear narrative that suggests that consumer confidence is falling apart, blah, 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 and that, inflation is going to skyrocket. So this is a precursor to that. And that's going to get ugly when that doesn't resolve the way they expect it to, which is why you do see the positive extremes from right here. We had our previous ones already got resolved from the last dip, but this new run is definitely going to bring us a test back to it once inflation doesn't come out exactly as expected. And, if oil doesn't rise, then where are you going to get that inflation from? Chinese products being sold, that's the extent of where the inflation's coming from. Good luck with that one. Bitcoin didn't do anything. It's sort of paralyzed. Actually, what's significant about it is it didn't decline. And the same here with ETH. They didn't decline with the NASDAQ in a matching form. So they had some resilience within the configuration. And that was pretty good. So for the last couple of days, we saw MBI white spike. Didn't produce anything. We waited for the magenta to dip. Got another MBI white spike. Magenta held up a little bit longer, and then you had a brief dip. And you might have been like, oh my, I got this little dip right here. I can jump into short, and then you have this up thing, and you're thinking, oh no, crisis again. But then it resolved to the bottom side, and that's clear, where you get the crossover of white to red. You get the magenta under yellow, and below the 25 level. That's a dream come true. That's simple, just click and go. And sure enough, it resolved itself from yesterday all the way to the open, and quite significantly all the way to the zero. So, and that's where you get that risk to reward. You look at that range between where you're at to the 0%, and yeah, that becomes really effective, because 55.40 there, and you're looking at 52.50 for well, this is where the current was up at 53.35, a little bit higher than that, right? Let me get exact. Yeah, that looks good. Almost. Go right on top of it. 53.40 range. So it filled it completely beautifully. We ended up getting a secondary MBI white, and that led to the next set of new lows going down, and that continued for a little while until right there, beautiful magenta takes the lead at the 23%. As you can see, though, no steel reset. Again, not going to hold. And if it does, it's going to be pretty divergent. And so you're likely to see a pullback down. That's got to get a reset developed in there. Or we have to look for the shakeout to show us rising gold as a nullifying effect. And we don't have that at this particular stage. So that's the long and the short of it. Complicated? No. Pretty detailed from the information that we get from our readings. Absolutely. When we look at it from the 5-minute, yeah. Brief pop at the morning, and then boom, they just wiped out all the call buyers that had built up everything. And then when the put buyers get too strong, you're going to flip it back the other direction, and that this should wipe them out as well. And that's what the European doing, is set to kill all that gamma and everything. So perfect. Another good week. As always, anything relevant, I'll put it on the Skype chat. Have a good one. Trade well.